Good afternoon. My name is John Farney. I'm a county board member from St. Joseph, District 3. I'm also the vice chairman of the Champaign County Board's Finance Committee. Thanks for joining us today so we can present this educational program about the public safety sales tax question that will be on your ballots on November 5th. Let's start with the first question. Why is Champaign County requesting additional revenue? Well, Champaign County has certain responsibilities that we are required to administer for the public. We administer the criminal justice system, and over the last several years we have seen increased costs to maintain the criminal justice system, and that includes everything from the courthouse, the jail, the people that work in those facilities, public defender, state's attorney, probation department, juvenile detention facility. Champaign County is responsible for paying for those things, even though the persons that a lot of times that are in the criminal justice system come from other entities. It's not just the Champaign County Sheriff that is bringing people to be part of the justice system. It's the city of Champaign, the city of Urbana, the village of Rantoul, Fisher, Tolono. Everyone in Champaign County shares that responsibility. All of those police agencies, when they make an arrest, they get brought into the county justice system. But everything is funded by the county when you are involved in the criminal justice system. We've also seen inflation cause expenses to outpace revenue. Inflation has hit us as well. We also have seen the effects of changes to the criminal justice system through the Pretrial Fairness Act and the Safety Act. Recent reform of the criminal justice fines and fees system has led to a significant reduction in revenue, in the amount of revenue that's generated through the criminal justice system. And we are not a home rule county, so that means we're severely limited in our ability to maintain a stable rate of revenue that meets the demands of a growing population. And our justice system grows every year. You might have seen a news article yesterday in the News Gazette talking about exactly this. We also look at our projected revenue for the next several years, and quite honestly, the Champaign County General Fund is in a position where we are seeing draws on that general fund in order to maintain our services. The Champaign County General Fund is where your property taxes go to. That is basic government. That is where we fund most of the criminal justice system through. Right now, our goal is to always have at least 2 months of reserves, just like you would do at home. You want to make sure you have some money should something happen so that you can live for a couple of months while you get back on your feet. The county does the same thing. It's a responsible thing to do. Well, as we have to draw on this fund, we see where that fund starts to dip below where we need it to be so that we can be responsible and make sure that we can maintain the services that we offer. The last several years, Champaign County has also worked to improve the health of our finances, and that has resulted in us having one of the highest bond ratings that the county has had in decades, quite honestly. And if we drop below a certain level of balance in our general fund, we risk losing that. And when you lose that, it's just like when you're buying a house. If you have a lower credit score, you're going to see your mortgage rates, things that you can do, it's going to cost you more. Same thing happens at government entities. So it's important that we maintain a high bond rating when the next project comes along that we need to take care of. We've already added one judge. We don't have a courtroom for him. So, and that was added by the state. We need a judge. We have enough cases in our system to use it. We're going to be looking at things down the road. It might not be in the next 2 or 3 years, but eventually the courthouse is going to run out of space. We want to make sure we're in the right position to make sure we're cost effective on that. So what are the other ways that Champaign County, or what are the ways that Champaign County could increase revenue? Well, let's look at a couple of them here. The first one we talk about is the Veterans Assistance Commission levy. That would be a property tax. That would require voter approval, and it would be funds only to be used for the Veterans Assistance Commission. The Veterans Assistance Commission is authorized by state law to request a significant amount of money more than what they currently receive in county funding. This would be a property tax. It would be initiated by the board. It would have to be approved by the voters. That tax would have to be put in a special fund. So like I said, it can only be used for Veterans Assistance Commission needs. The repealing of PTEL, that's tax caps. Champaign County adopted tax caps back in the 1990s, and it's been in place since then. To remove tax caps would involve a referendum by the voters. We'd have to actually start with voters a petition drive. And to record right now, no county has repealed PTEL in the state of Illinois. Facilities sales tax, that again would be another referendum. Champaign County has previously attempted a facility sales tax. The last attempt was in 2016 and that failed. That can increase in quarter-cent increments, similar to the public safety sales tax. And we currently do not have a facility sales tax in Champaign County. Again, this would be only for facilities, so those funds would have to be segregated only for use on facility needs. And what we're asking for this referendum is the public safety sales tax. Public safety sales tax currently is a quarter-cent on every dollar spent in Champaign County. That tax was approved by voters in 1998 and has not been raised since it was first created. So let's look at the current uses of that tax, since we currently have that sales tax. In 2022, the sales tax generated $6,408,000. $6,408,000. My wife keeps saying that I need to get reading glasses, and I keep saying, no, I don't need reading glasses. In 2023, we're projected to generate about $6,605,000. In 2017, the state of Illinois, for the first time, began imposing a collection fee on the sales tax revenue, and that has cost us over $500,000. The state, just for the privilege of them collecting it, has decided to keep some of it for themselves. For fiscal year 2024, the public safety sales tax has a balance of $6,040,904. Now, in that balance is approximately $3 million that has to always stay in that fund to cover bonds. Those are bonds that are currently out on projects related to public safety that Champaign County has funded. So we always have to have our debt service maintained there. So when you see a number like 6 million, really, it's about 3 million is what we actually have that potentially could be used. Additionally, through sound fiscal management, the county has built up that fund because we know that there are things that have to be addressed very soon, especially the computer system that runs the court system. The current JANO system is due for replacement, and a majority of those funds will need to be expended by the end of fiscal year 2026. The JANO system, it was in place when I first worked for the county back in 2006. So if you know anything about software, we're going on 20 years with the same software system. That's almost unheard of. And so that is coming down the pike right now. So what are we currently using the tax for? Like I said, 48% of the bond revenue, of the revenue for the public safety sales tax is dedicated to debt service on the bonds issued for the construction on the Champaign County Courthouse, the juvenile detention facility, and the jail consolidation project that is currently ongoing. 5% of the public safety sales tax revenue is dedicated to juvenile delinquency prevention programs, and it's been that way since 1998. Other uses in the court document include the court document management system, public safety facility maintenance, reentry programs, and out-of-county housing of inmates. Now let's talk about what are some of the things that the tax money can be used for. The legislature limits what public safety sales tax revenue can be used to fund. And that's why it is very specific that these things have to apply only to public safety items. The money must be allocated to things in the public safety realm. And while this limits where the revenue is spent, it still affects the overall county budget by contributing revenue to the budget in general. So, what can we do? We can maintain debt service and the 5% contribution to juvenile delinquency programs. Additional funds can be used for sheriff's deputies on rural patrols. Right now, at any one time, there are 3 or possibly 4 sheriff's deputies patrolling the 1,000 square miles of Champaign County. More public defenders can be to keep our justice system moving along, so we can pay for additional attorneys. In the state's attorney's office, it could be used to increase services to victims of violent crime and additional attorneys to represent them. Money can be used for funding for the Juvenile Detention Center. Money can be used for additional funding for veteran services, not as a public safety issue, but the additional public safety sales tax revenue would allow the county to reconfigure allocations so that funding could be provided to the Veterans Assistance Commission. And this in turn could make it so that an additional property tax levy wouldn't have to be considered. This is the actual ballot language of the referendum question. It's a proposition to approve special county retailers' occupation tax for public safety. To pay for public safety purposes, shall Champaign County be authorized to impose an increase on its share of local sales tax by 1/4%. This would mean that a consumer would pay an additional 25 cents in sales tax for every $100 of tangible personal property bought at retail, and you will have the options of yes or no. Now, this tax does not apply to groceries, does not apply to titled or registered personal property such as cars, trucks, boats, motorcycles, trailers, farm implements, does not apply to prescription and non-prescription medicines, and it does not apply to medical supplies. Now, that's really a generalization, because the law is very specific on things, but to give you a general idea on things it does not apply to, those are the big ones. And with that ends the presentation part of it, so I would invite my colleagues to come up here, and do you want to say? I guess we'll be taking some questions and answers.
Are you going to have people come?
Come on up. So it looks like we have someone with a microphone, so if you would like to ask a question, raise your hand and they'll bring the microphone to you and we'll try to answer as best we can.
Why don't you introduce your folks first?
Oh, sure. Again, I'm John Farney, County Board Member from St. Joseph.
I'm Liz Pollock, Champaign County Public Defender.
Elly, Hanauer-Friedman, Board Member from District 4 here in Champaign.
Fortado, I represent District 8, and I'm the finance chair. You can tell my voice is a little wonky. I've had a never-ending sinus issue, so I very much appreciate Representative Farney doing the presentation, because you don't want to listen to this for 20 minutes.
Steve Summers, Champaign County Executive.
Okay.
I don't think they heard you.
Sorry, Steve Summers, Champaign County Executive.
And you have to turn off that microphone for this microphone to work.
Oh, okay.
Well, thank you for your presentation. It was very interesting. Where can we find the data behind those generalizations that you presented, especially at the front? Where are your estimates? You know, how did you calculate inflation going out to 2028, et cetera? I assume there's data.
So we have a website, an educational website at champaigncounty.gov, champaigncounty.il.
ChampaignCountyIL.gov.
ChampaignCountyIL.gov. And there's probably more data on there than you're ever going to want.
So, it's not working. So, okay, is there a sunset on the sales tax so that when there's a more progressive tax, that would take over? Because, a sales tax, even though it's only on tangible goods, doesn't seem very progressive. It's more progressive than a general sales tax. So is there a sunset?
There is not a sunset on this initiative, no.
And Karen, I can speak to this too. Listen, I agree with you actually. I actually really had to think about this a lot because inherently, sales taxes are less progressive. As JD said, the options that we have are very limited because of PTEL. And just to be honest, the chances of us eliminating PTEL are, they're just not going to, right? And there's not a sunset because the economic need is not going to go away. It's just going to get greater. So if in the future we live in some much more happy world where we can look at some of these other options, but right now I don't think it would be responsible for it to have a sunset because I don't see the economic need that's driving this going away anytime in the near future.
So I guess why isn't it added to the property tax, which would be a little bit more progressive, rather than a sales tax?
Yeah, that would require the repeal of PTEL, which would be, I think, very difficult to pass. I just wanted to add to the ongoing and growing need for this too, is just the simple fact that our population is growing in this county faster than it is across the state right now, and we don't see that slowing down anytime soon.
Actually, in order to eliminate PTEL, that would require a separate referendum, but in order to raise the property taxes, that would be another ballot initiative that would have to go before the public. In looking at property tax increases that were put in place in Champaign County over the last few years, I think the thought on the board was that there was likely not be an appetite to be able to get a general property tax passed. This was the smallest increment of tax increase that we could actually put on the ballot without going for a property tax overall increase. I just don't think we would be successful in that effort. And the need is still going to be here, and it's coming down the road as shortly.
Steve? Just to add one more thing on, with Champaign-Urbana being a regional shopping hub, the sales tax does allow us to also collect revenue from people who live outside of Champaign County. And a lot of times, those folks are also people who use our justice system. We write traffic tickets to people from Ford County, from Douglas County. So it's, in my opinion, only fair that they also share in funding of our justice system, and they can do that by shopping here in Champaign-Urbana. And we get people that shop here from all over central Illinois and west central Indiana. And so it's really sharing the burden with the people that are using our community.
Okay, guys, will you turn that mic on for the next question?
Oh, okay. John, could you, or Steve, could you And sir, are we still paying on the courthouse from the construction in 2000 and the youth detention center from, I think, the same year, 2000? And this is gonna go on to 2028?
You can't turn yours on until they're finished.
Gotcha. So, yes, as a matter of fact, those bonds are still in force. In fact, we are, I'm going to use the term refinancing, even though it's, because it just makes more sense. We are actually refinancing those bonds to save the county about $75,000 a year for the next 5 years that those bonds are still out there. But in 2029, those bonds will go away.
What's important though too is I've had some people be like, oh, those bonds will go away and that'll free up, the money from them. No, because the jail consolidation bond right now, we are not paying principal. We structured it so that we start paying principal on that bond once those other ones retire. And what's looming is the courthouse. Getting another judge, we're gonna have to do something.
What about the county plaza?
The county plaza is a separate bond that is on our general revenue fund, and that's a totally separate bond. And it's a 20-year bond. And again, what drove that is we just didn't have enough space, right? If you go into the treasurer's office, she can barely put another piece of paper in there, let alone she needs more staff. Liz, who's our public defender, I might let her speak a little bit about space, because I know this is something that she likes to talk about.
I don't know if I'd say that. So the public defender's office is jammed into the courthouse right now. I have 3 employees in temporary cubicles in the middle of hallways and our conference room, because we don't have offices available for those individuals. And based on the space that we're allocated at the Bennett building, which is the County Plaza building that we would potentially be moving into, we're also too big for that now, because I've added some staff through grants. And so I have social workers for the first time in the history of the Champaign County Public Defender's Office. I've added a paralegal, an additional secretary, and we are still short-staffed. So if we're going to serve our citizens in the way that they deserve to be served regardless of income, at some point there's going to have to be an investment in courthouse space and personnel for me, or we're going to continue to not be able to pay attention to our clients in the way that they deserve.
And then I promise I'll stop with this. The other thing is, I think a lot of folks know that the sheriff's office and all of his personnel are in the same building as that downtown jail, where the roof is caving in. So we were gonna have to do something space-wise regardless. We were gonna have to find office space for the sheriff's office. And what ended up making sense for us is that that building was sitting there in downtown Urbana. And I'll just be also honest with you, we also saw it as a potential way to be an economic driver for downtown Urbana, because now we're going to have, I don't know if people know this, at least the last time I checked, the county's the 3rd biggest employer in the county. We're going to take those people, from kind of being off the beaten path, and we're going to put them right in the center of downtown Urbana, right? And I think that I really am excited about it, because I think it could be a game changer in terms of more people being in the city of Urbana, using the restaurants, right? Going and getting a cup of coffee. All the people that come to the building, right? Instead of it just being off in a parking lot, kind of back where nobody sees it, they're gonna be active in the city of Urbana. A lot of longtime board members, Stan Harper, who's a Republican, Susan McGrath, who is our circuit clerk, and is not used to be on the board, they were like, we should have done this 20 years ago.
I have a question. You mentioned that because of the Safety Act, the amount of revenue that the county received has been reduced. And could you describe that?
Fees and fines have been drastically eliminated. We're not even a full year into the Safety Act, but our circuit clerk has been keeping track of what the reduction in income is, and at last discussion with her, she estimated it would be about $1 million a year.
And if you go on to that website, there's a lot more information about that, but it's not just that fund that has been reduced. We also we get money called a personal property replacement tax. And that is money that comes to us from the state, and basically businesses don't pay property taxes to local government agencies, and instead of that, they pay this, right? What was it, JJ, 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, we got a memo, and one of the reasons our fund balance is so high, or is healthier right now, is because that tax just was really performing well, and we were like, oh, this is great. We got a memo from the state that said, you know what, we miscalculated it. And so it's gonna go back down, and in the meantime, we're gonna actually even give you less, because we gotta claw back that extra money we gave you. The reduction for this year is about $1 million. So we have both of those things going on. I don't think it's gonna be about $1 million forever. I think it'll shake out eventually once they're done with the clawback, but it's gonna be hundreds of thousands of dollars less. Then, the third thing that we haven't had to start fully paying yet, but is out there looming on the horizon, is, again, a couple years ago, the state passed a new rule that said that any government, or any county that has a Veterans Assistance Commission has to spend 0.02% of their EAV on supporting veterans. Equalize the assessed value of all the properties, right? Now, I think that's great. I think we should be supporting our veterans. That in Champaign County is $1 million we don't have that $1 million. So we could go try to get a tax just to cover that, as JJ was describing, but then that would only address that issue. When this rule was passed, we were spending about $100,000 a year. We're up to about $250,000. And that means there's still $750,000. If the Veterans Assistance Commission asked us for it tomorrow, we'd have to give it to them. And we'd have to give it to them every single year. Now, the public safety sales tax does not address that. But what it does is we could take some of the expenses that are currently in our general fund. Almost all of our public safety staff is on our general fund. We pay, except for I think one person, all of the deputies are on our general fund. What this tax would allow us to do is move some of them and put them on the public safety sales tax fund, and then that would free up revenue in order to, for example, to give more money to our veterans, which I think we should do, right? The state passed this rule. We should be giving them what is required. Just right now, I don't know how to do it, right? Because we do not have that capacity.
Could you talk a little bit about what happens to young people when there isn't space or staff in the juvenile detention center?
Right now, Champaign County Juvenile Detention Center can accommodate probably 25 minors. Today, there are 19 minors in the juvenile detention facility. That is probably the highest amount that we've had in the last 3 years. The average daily census at the Juvenile Detention Center over the last year is 8.7. So right now it's a significant increase. If we don't have space or the ability to house minors at Champaign County Juvenile Detention Center, we have to seek other detention centers. There's only 17 juvenile detention centers in the state of Illinois. In the last year, due to various issues of needing to keep people separated, maybe cases overlap, or there might be a lot of times there's a gang issue. We've attempted to go to other centers, most likely Springfield, Sangamon County, and they've also declined to take minors. So what happens if we run out of space? Well, that's a conversation for the folks at the Juvenile Detention Center to have with the state's attorney, because then it's looking at, okay, what does the state's attorney need to, what type of cases does the state's attorney need to keep in custody? And it becomes really a management issue of how do we manage these numbers. When we do have minors that have to go elsewhere, like I said, Sangamon County is probably the first choice because it's the closest, because of concerns for having family members to be able to visit with their minors. Peoria County might also be an option. Otherwise, most of them are far north, up in the Chicago area.
So we had an issue this year where there was insufficient staff, and so a couple of my clients who were children had to be moved out of county away from their families. And it is devastating to them and their parents to not have access to them. Our juvenile detention center right now provides good opportunities for visitation with the minors' families. These people can't drive to Peoria and Springfield. And one of my clients was 3 hours north. I don't have access to my client that far away because I don't have enough time in the day to sit down, much less drive to Lake County to visit somebody. And I can tell you, after 20 years of doing this, there is nothing like being in the room with your client. You cannot get the work done when they are far away. And so if we could more adequately pay our juvenile detention staff and fund additional programming for them, I think we would see the recidivism rate reduce. I think we would see healthier families and healthier outcomes. And as it stands right now, we didn't have a choice but to move them away from me and move them away from their parents. And that was unacceptable, but we didn't have a choice.
Talking about the lack of staff or limited staff at JDC, our salaries, I do not believe are competitive to get staff that we really need to have. And if we were able to have additional revenue through public safety sales tax, we would be able to boost that salary and at least remove that part of the issue with JDC in terms of making sure we had adequate number of staffs there to keep our kids in Champaign County and not move them up to Lake County or Sangamon County, which just really is not an appropriate way to address this.
And one more thing about JDC staff, it is required that they have a bachelor's degree. And right now, we and a lot of other counties, there's actually not a lot of counties that have JDCs. The state has given us a waiver so that they don't have to have that bachelor's degree, which is one of the reasons we were able to get our staff up. But we know that that waiver isn't gonna happen forever. And if we don't figure out the salary piece, the other thing, at our recent, we just, in the beginning of August, had 3 days of budget hearings where everybody, all the elected officials and department heads come and say, this is what I'd like you to give me. And then I just, go home and stare at my desk. But one of the things that the JDC director asked us for was money to do a study and then hire a permanent person for compliance with the PREA Act. And if you don't know what PREA is, it's Prison Rape Elimination Act. Now this is not because of like a specific issue, but like because she wants to be proactive, she thinks it's the right thing to do, she thinks it's the best practice. I'm very much hoping that we could find money in order to do the study this year. But to be honest, if we long-term want to have somebody whose dedicated job that is, we have to figure out those resources, and that would be a very difficult thing to do in our current sort of budget model.
What's your plan B? What happens if this doesn't pass?
That's a good question.
We'd likely be looking at salary freezes, elimination of positions, because the bulk of the money that we spend is on staff. So if we do not have adequate funds to be able to do the things that we need to do, we'll have to look at ways to cut. And that's just the way it's going to have to be, unfortunately.
Am I correct that this money from the public safety tax cannot be used for facilities?
It can be used only for facilities that are part of the criminal justice system. So if, for example, we decide down the road that we need to bond something out to add on to the courthouse, those funds can be used on that. It's currently, like we mentioned earlier, we're paying off the end of the juvenile detention center right now with public safety sales tax money. It would not be able to use, this is a great example, now that the sheriff's office will be in the Bennett building, facility money that we might have paid on a standalone sheriff's building could have come from public safety, but because now they share the building with other administrative things, that cannot.
Let me give you a really specific example. One of the things the current public safety sales tax does, that we currently have, pays for the sheriff's electric bill. Because he's moving to Bennett, and there's other, all the other, we're no longer allowed to do that. So that has to move to the general fund. We can't pay his piece of the utility. So it is very strict. And we've had our state's attorney's office look at it over and over again. And before we expend anything, we always check with them to make sure it's within state statute.
So we talked about how the Safety Act has reduced fines and fees, but I believe hasn't it added responsibilities to the public defender and the state attorney's office? Can we talk about that a little bit?
Yes, that's correct. So just first and foremost, I'm a huge fan of the Safety Act and the Pretrial Fairness Act. Nobody should be stuck in jail because they can't pay a $500 bond fee. That's just wrong. And I think that the spirit of the law is good, and we have seen a reduction in our jail population, as well as a more fair and lengthy process to talk about detention. But it has added significant steps for both the State's Attorney's Office and my office. Specifically, under the old bond system, the only thing that had to happen was the State's Attorney would present a probable cause statement, the judge would hear a 5-minute argument, and then would pick a bond number. And that was the conclusion of the pretrial process for that person. Now, in order to try for detention, there must be a verified petition filed by the State's Attorney's Office, which is then conveyed to us. There are discovery obligations that did not exist under the previous law. So we are now able, and they are required to give us all of the information that they are relying upon in seeking detention. So that can sometimes be 10 pages of reports, sometimes it's 150 pages of reports, and then it is our responsibility upon receiving that information to review it all and discuss it with our client to prepare the most appropriate argument for, or in our case, against pretrial detention. It used to be that I could have one lawyer staff the entire day for arraignment court. We would do our intake with our clients in the morning, one person would go to court, we'd make our arguments, and that was the end of the process. The workload on the front end of cases has tripled based upon the PFA. So now I have sometimes 2, sometimes 3 attorneys who are assigned to court that day. We have detention hearings that are independent in the mornings now, which involves transportation from the jail to the courthouse because everybody's appearing in person, which has created a staffing issue at our jail with additional correctional officers to do transportation. We have to develop those arguments based on a significant amount of information that we never had previously. Arguments are lasting, they're not 5 minutes anymore. I had one the other day that was almost an hour, trying to fight over whether this person deserved to be released or not. There's just, the process has ballooned in terms of what the responsibilities are for both the Public Defender's Office and the State's Attorney's Office. So I would say that although I'm a huge fan, I like the purpose of the act, but we are struggling to keep up with the workload under the new system.
And just to add to that at the same time, and Liz, you can probably speak to this as well, I think both our State's Attorney's Office and Public Defender's Office are dealing with staffing issues because, again, the county, it's really hard for us to compete salary-wise, and attorneys can make a lot more money in the private sector. So we've lost, I think, 2 or 3 just recently in the state's attorney's office. 4. And this is another issue that the tax could at least help us address.
Oh, thank you. And I came in late, so I apologize if this question has already been answered. But I have seen a lot of revenues coming into the county lately, and a lot of huge expenditures. And I'm unclear, like, how is it that we have financed a $22 million new office building project when we knew or should have known that these additional expenses and priorities were coming up? Also, we spent $20-some million on the jail, which I was told at the time would help reduce the workload of our sheriff's department. And we now are supposed to have a reduction of about $3 million a year in terms of saved on from out of county housing, and jail population is down. Like, how are we finding money for these other priorities, and still needing money for these, I definitely agree that public defender has needed more funding for a long time, but $7 million seems out of proportion to that problem.
Sure. I can take I hear you, right?
Can you repeat the question?
So the question was basically, why did we invest money in facilities, like a new office renovation, when we knew that we had all of these structural issues? I think the two are related. We did not have enough space. And what I was saying before is, regardless of if we renovated the Bennett Center or not, where the sheriff's office is right now that building is going to get torn down soon. I'm hoping by 2026. The roof is caving in. The roofer that we have who comes and fixes our roof basically told us, lose my number. I'm not sending my guys up there anymore, right? So we had to, no matter what, we were going to spend a significant amount of money in order to move the sheriff somewhere, right? So when we looked at the landscape, and this is another really, really important thing, is because Urbana is the county seat, the facility that houses county government has to be in Urbana. There's not a lot of empty office space in Urbana. So we were either going to have to do new construction, or, just to be honest, the facility that was out there that was big enough, although according to our public defender, maybe not quite big enough, for our staffing needs as they currently exist. We in the county have an incredibly hard time attracting, keeping staff. We've just lost 4 state's attorneys. We were so understaffed in juvenile detention, as we were describing. We were having to send people out of county. Our IT person, he is having incredible difficulty hiring people. I think there's a lot of reasons for that. 1, our salaries are too low, but 2, people don't want to work in super crowded, super stressful conditions. We were going to have to address the facility shortage at some time. We couldn't just, it was not a problem that we could just continue to kick down the road forever. And the Bennett building was not only available, it was available at a buyer's price, right? The person who owned it wanted to get out from under it. And so we made that decision. That said, we have to balance all of these, right? And I hear what you're saying, but I think it was the right decision.
As Stephanie said, if we were going to recite the sheriff, it had to be in Urbana. That's something we have to do by statute. We looked at what just back of the envelope costs would be to build a freestanding sheriff's office with all the things that he needs in terms of special storage, and the price tag was about $23 million. We're gonna end up spending less than that on Bennett and being able to allow for additional space for all the rest of county employees and move them downtown directly adjacent to the courthouse. So to me, I think we've actually had cost savings of what we would have been having to charge taxpayers for if we'd had to build a freestanding sheriff's office. And closing the jail, that was something that had to be done. That facility was not suitable, and we had to, if we're going to incarcerate people temporarily while they're waiting trial, we cannot have a roof that's dripping on them. We cannot have a facility that's not appropriate. And we needed to make that change in terms of the additional space that was added at the jail facility that we're using now.
To your question about the $3 million from out-of-county housing, while the jail has been being renovated, we have been housing people that we are responsible for incarcerating outside of the county, and it has cost us about $3 million a year. And I've had a lot of people say, oh, you're going to get that $3 million back, and that takes care of everything. So first of all, when we bring them back, it's going to cost us money. We have to pay for their food, we have to pay for their medical care, and that's about, looking at the budget hearing that we just had, it's about $600,000. Even with the 2.3 additional $1 million that we got back, our 2025 budget, now we haven't passed it, it's not all the way done until November, is about $1 million in the red. I don't think that's exactly where it's going to be. It's going to probably shake out somewhere, but it's going to be in the high six figures. Because of, we've lost $1 million because of the Safety Act in fines and fees. We've seen this dramatic reduction in, because of a personal property replacement tax. And I cannot emphasize this enough, the slide that JJ had, our expenses across the board because of inflation have gone up. So when you add it all up, if we hadn't gotten that 2-point-something million back, our deficit this year would be in the $3.5 million this year in 2028. So when we say that we're trying to raise this tax, I mean, there's a lot of different reasons that are driving it. And I think Liz wanted to say something.
I do. I want to address the jail issue specifically. I wasn't in this position when the jail expansion was passed. I vaguely remember reading in the news about the back and forth and the argument that we don't want to expand the jail at all, versus some people wanted a much larger expansion, and what has been settled on is kind of this middle of the road. We're going to build some more, but we're not going to build everything that the sheriff had asked for. And what I would like to direct everybody to is to think about what it is like to be incarcerated in a county jail. Because I am decarceral. I believe our criminal justice system locks up too many people, too many poor people, too many black and brown people for too many reasons. And I don't think they should. But we are not in an ivory tower. We are in Champaign County, and nothing is going to change except for incrementally over a period of time. This is not a field of dreams situation. If you build it, they will come. If you build it, they will fill it. No, we already have over 100 people housed out of county, and the number of beds that are created by the new jail project are not going to house all of them. We are still going to have out of county expenses because of separation orders and things of that nature. And one of the biggest parts of the jail expansion project is to create a safe space for my clients who have mental health issues, substance abuse issues, to expand the classes that they can take so that they can work on things while they are waiting for their trial and hopefully avoid coming back into the system in the future. There is also a little known law that gives my clients extra credit off of their sentences if they complete courses while they're in pretrial detention. And as of right now, we can't afford to offer any of the courses that qualify because you have to take a minimum of 60 days and a minimum of 15 hours or more of participation, and unfortunately none of the programs that we offer meet that requirement. So I want to expand the service to my people. These are my people that are in there. And the facilities are inadequate, and now they're going to be at least a little bit better. So while I am decarceral, I'm also well aware of the impact that my clients have from a facility that is inferior, and we're about to at least make some improvements in that. So I just wanted to be very clear about that for people that oppose the jail expansion. From an intellectual perspective, I agree with you. From a boots on the ground perspective, trying to help the people that I represent every day, let's get them some services and some safe space.
Thank you for being here. Appreciate the time, appreciate the discussion. Oh, question.
Don't turn on your.
It's not on. It's not on.
Thanks, Public Defender, for turning that on. Alrighty. I'll use my big boy voice. Hi, my name is Jeff Wilson. I'm on the county board. So my question then is, thank you again for being here. Appreciate you taking the time and effort to be here. My question is, let's assume the bill passes. So that's about $6.5, maybe $7 million that's added to the Champaign County budget for personal safety purposes. Public safety, I messed that up. Public safety, excuse me. And then that money is used for public safety for like the sheriff, public defender, JDC, court services, all those great services. What's the county's plan for the $6.5 million that's in the general fund that's no longer allocated for public safety?
So first of all, as we've discussed at a lot of meetings, we won't be moving $6.5 million off of the general fund. A lot of what we're going to be doing are new things. So, for example, the public defender has a specific proposal that I'll let her speak about. We do not have enough public defenders, right? The sheriff just asked us to move in 2 of his shifts, he does not have sergeant coverage. And given what recently happened in Sangamon County, he feels like there should be a sergeant, somebody who has that sort of authority on every shift. He wants to convert 2 of his deputies to sergeants, but that means that we're now down to regular deputies. He wants 2 new deputies because right now in our county, if you are in an unincorporated area of our county, the average time it takes for a 911 call response is 12.5 minutes, and in some of the more rural areas, it's 13.5 minutes. I talked about the juvenile detention person wants this PREA compliance person, right? We heard at our budget sessions, elected official after elected official coming and giving us very concrete plans. The sheriff has provided a 3.5-page memo outlining specifically what he would do if he had more resources. He would like to get the sheriff's office accredited so that we have a sheriff's office that is accredited by the best standards for sheriff's office in the United States. He doesn't have the staff to do that right now, to invest in getting us through that process, right? So we have very, very specific plans for these different offices. At the same time, it will free up some money from the general fund. For example, in order to pay for the Veterans Affairs that we're short right now. But I'm gonna since we do have one department head here, I'm gonna let Liz talk about her specific proposal about what she would do if she had more resources.
Oh, the things we would do. There was a recent, public defender workload is always a subject of debate in this country, and for whatever reason, since Gideon versus Wainwright in the 60s, it's just been assumed that we're supposed to be underpaid, overworked, and basically tortured to death until we quit and do something else. So the national workload standards have not been updated since the 70s. And last year they finally came out with updated workload standards. The RAND Corporation did a study. They said that, you know, we have to spend a certain number of hours on each case to really adequately and zealously represent someone. And what this comes down to is what our society values and how much they care about my clients. And the answer based on current funding is that they don't. Because when I joined this office in December of 2022, I had an attorney who had over 500 open cases. We were severely understaffed. People can only do it for a short period of time before they burn out and move on to something that doesn't make them lose sleep at night, where they can actually spend time with their children, and they're working under 80 hours a week. And the recent RAND Corporation study applied to Champaign County's caseloads indicate that I should have 27 attorneys. I've got 16. My spots are all filled, which was not the case when I started. I had 9 when I started. Now I've got 16 attorneys, and we're still not able to keep up. And I'd ask everybody who has the ability to hire a private attorney to put yourself in the shoes of somebody who doesn't, and wonder what it feels like to be a mom or a dad or a brother or a sister or a client and not be able to talk to your attorney for weeks because they are in court and they just don't have the time. And that's including us working after hours and on weekends. We simply cannot keep up. And what we're telling our population of Champaign County is that you're not important enough and we don't care enough about you to fund this. You're not valuable. And that is what we have told them with the current funding structure. So my request, obviously I'm not asking for 27 attorneys or we'd have people sitting in windowsills, but what I'm asking for is 3. And that will allow me to add an additional person to each felony courtroom so that they can have under 250 cases apiece. It will create expediency in the justice system because we will be able to pay attention to everyone the way they deserve to be paid attention to. Imagine yourself in a jail cell and the only line to the outside that you have that isn't recorded is your lawyer. And you can't get through to them for 2 weeks because they're too busy to talk to you. And as much as we care and as hard as we work and as hard as we try, we cannot keep up. And so what that causes is emotional strain, depression, fatigue. My people are working with me because they believe in the value of the mission that we represent. They're not doing it for the money, and they're certainly not doing it for the lifestyle. And I'd like to be able to give them some peace of mind that they don't have to feel bad because they didn't work a full Saturday.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at. And we don't have any money for expert witnesses. I was granted through ARPA funds because the county board understands the importance of this. I was able to get some money to pay for experts and achieved a dismissal in a murder case where a domestic violence victim had battered woman syndrome and did not commit the crime alleged. And we were able to prove it only because of that grant. And I have never seen an office, I used to work with the feds, I know they have a lot more money than we do, but anytime I needed a witness, I could find one. Anytime I needed to pay for an expert, I could do it. I cannot do that here. And there are so many opportunities for training and increasing the performance of my lawyers that I could do with this money, and that is why I would like to see that happen at some point in the future for us, because we're going to continue to lose people because the emotional stress is too much.
Okay. Thank you all for presenting this information, and I hope that it will be valuable for the voters, and we have a program to start at 3, so.
We just want to thank the League of Women Voters so much for having us. You always put on such a beautiful, the work that you do is so important. And I also wanted to point out, we do have some deputies here, so on the way out, if you wanted to speak individually with some deputies and what they're seeing, you're more than welcome to do that. But thank you so much to the League.